One of the biggest breaks on the Ukraine story has happened in the last 24 hours with the release of testimony from Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland. Now, I'm going to go through this with you because the guy that Trump has been pointing to, saying, look, he says there was no quid pro quo. That guy has now testified that there was a quid pro quo. So this is major. But there's actually a bigger issue to address here. There is I guess I would call it, let's use a building analogy. There's a systemic rot that is taking over the issue of Ukraine for Donald Trump and for Republicans. And for the last few weeks, the foundation has been starting to fracture and rot and weaken below ground level, right? It was only visible, though, if you were standing in the basement. But outside, they were still keeping up the facade of the house as if it were solid and strong. But over the last 48 hours, that foundational rot has started to be noticeable from the outside because the house is starting to implode on itself. It can't be avoided. Even standing out in the street, you see the house starting to slump over in disrepair. And Republicans don't know what to do because they can't defend Donald Trump anymore on the facts. Early on, they were trying to defend Donald Trump on the facts. There was no quid pro quo. The phone call was fine. The military aid, so on and so forth. They now have been relegated to just having to attack the whistleblower, like Kentucky Senator Rand Paul did, and which we talked about yesterday or the day before. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham a month ago said there's no evidence of a quid pro quo. Now there is, thanks in part to Gordon Sondland. So Lindsey Graham now is saying, I'm not even going to read his testimony because it's just not worth my time. What? Well, then you shouldn't get your $175,000 a year from taxpayers, right? If you're not even willing to do your job, at least you shouldn't get your $175,000. He probably will continue to. So here's what happened. Donald Trump has been saying for weeks, Gordon Sondland, the ambassador to the European Union, he said it. There was no quid pro quo on my call with Ukraine. So clearly, Donald Trump believes we can trust the word of Gordon Sondland, right? Well, no, it's Trump. You can trust the word of Gordon Sondland if his word is convenient for Donald Trump. Remember that Gordon Sondland was appointed by Donald Trump. Sondland was a major Trump mega donor who gave $1 million to Trump's inauguration. By the way, that entire thing is another fiasco that needs to be fixed. These inauguration funds serve effectively as slush money for what is effectively political bribery and influence peddling, but that's a story for a different day. But Gordon Sondland has now amended his testimony, saying, you know what? Trump's dealings with Ukraine, they were a quid pro quo. Sondland talks about a meeting that happened on September 1st with a top aide to the Ukrainian president, during which it was made clear, according to Sondland, U.S. military aid to Ukraine is contingent upon President Zelensky publicly saying he's launching investigations into Joe Biden, which Donald Trump wanted in order to help him in his 2020 reelection campaign. So that's it, right? I mean, whistleblowers are now irrelevant. The guy Trump appointed, who said we should be looking for him for the truth, says there was a quid pro quo. Now, let's get into the reaction to this, because we knew that anytime there's an amended testimony that is not convenient for Donald Trump, the conspiracy theories would start. So if you ask Republicans, why did Gordon Sondland first say one thing and now say something else? They are coming up with all sorts of theories. And the most popular one is the Dems got to Sondland. They threatened his life. They made it clear that they'll destroy his family and his career if he doesn't lie and say there was a quid pro quo. Is that theoretically possible? Sure. But with so many other people who are corroborating the same story, why do Democrats need to do something criminal in threatening Gordon Sondland in this way in order to get just one guy to change his testimony when there are so many other people that are saying the exact same thing happened? The more likely scenario is that earlier on, Gordon Sondland didn't yet know how big the Ukraine fiasco was going to get. Sondland thought, I can get away with some kind of mealy-mouthed statement saying, this is sort of what I recall right now. Things might be missing. I might update my testimony in the future, and hoping it would all sort of die down and that he wouldn't end up actually a part of a much bigger scandal. It's now clear it's not going away. It's now clear that everybody else who was involved, who has any knowledge of what happened with Ukraine, says there was a quid pro quo, and Sondland simply has to come totally clean, which he is now doing. Tell me what you think explains Gordon Sondland's change of position on this issue. I believe that Republicans have absolutely no evidence whatsoever for their theory that he was strong-armed, pressured, threatened by Democrats. I mean, there's no evidence whatsoever. And absent evidence, what I would imagine is that he went in, as many people who have to give testimony do. Initially, what's best for them is to say as little as possible, to be as least controversial as they can be, with the hopes that they'll be forgotten, because people generally don't like the idea of having to go and testify in these ways. That didn't happen, and he is now coming totally clean. That's my view. Let me know. Either leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, send me a tweet. I'm on Twitter @dpakman. And while you're there, make sure you're following me. I am approaching 100,000 Twitter followers, a completely arbitrary and meaningless, but nice looking round number. And I would appreciate your help in getting to that. Tonight, live stream, join me on Twitch at twitch.tv/David Pakman. The David Pakman Show is possible thanks to sponsors like Vincero Watches, giving everyone in our audience 15% off your entire order when you go to davidpakman.com/watch. I just got a couple of new watches from these guys, and I love them. I got the Kairos limited release Gold Reserve set, which is very cool. I love the white face, the simple band, and everything about it. It's a perfect size for my wrist. Really great choice. I also picked out the Vincero Bellwether in silver and white. And what I love about this one, number one, the Roman numeral at the top of the face. The white face is great. This is a chronograph model, and I love the blue leather band. It's just a really nice looking watch. Everybody who sees me wear this one always asks about it. What I like about Vincero as a watch brand is you're getting quality, and you're getting a watch where it's clear as soon as you open the box that a lot of care and artisanship went into the design and the way that the watch is put together. I'm not interested in paying thousands of dollars for a watch when I can get one that's reasonably priced and looks just as nice and has terrific build quality. And that's exactly what Vincero is in the business of doing, putting a ton of craftsmanship into their watches, making them available for $150, $200. You really can't go wrong. Check them out at davidpakman.com/watch. Support the people who support our show, and you'll save 15% when you use that link.